Hallelujah. Giving praise and honor to the Most High and thanking Him for our lives. Thank you for strength and good health, the opportunity to be here this day to worship before Him, and praying that His presence would be with us on this day, and praying that He would teach us all the knowledge, wisdom, and understanding necessary in order for us to survive on this world that He has created and allowed us the opportunity to breathe His air on. You may be seated. So once again, we've come before the Most High, Jehovah, our God, the creator of the heavens and the earth, the God that we read about in the book of Genesis in the beginning, where it says, in the beginning, God created the heavens and the earth. So in this place, we pray that the Most High's presence would be here this day, for we come before Him and worship before Him and Him only. And it's our responsibility to make sure that we do not attach His name with anyone else's name, because He alone, Jehovah our God, Jehovah alone is King. Jehovah alone is the creator of the heavens and the earth. And that's the only name that we read when we read throughout the Holy Scriptures, which is the book that we will be opening up this time. We are going to the book of Ezekiel. So even on this day, the prophet Ezekiel is receiving word from Jehovah, who is the creator of the heavens and the earth. So once again, He is the one that provides us with everything that we need. He is the one that gives us life. He's the one that gives us health. So even when we may find ourselves sick, He's the one that keeps us alive and allows us the opportunity to be healed. So that's how He's also known as the healer, because He's the one that provides us that healing during the times when we are sick. We acknowledge Jehovah our God as the provider. For when there are times that we needed something, whether it's food, clothing, or shelter, He is the one that provides that for us. So we have to make sure that we live our lives in total obedience to the creator of the heavens and the earth, because once again, He is the one that gives us everything that we need in order to survive. And He gives us the things because He knows everything that we need. There are things that we may feel that we want, but Jehovah God knows what we actually need. So you may pray and you may not get the things that you want, but you'll always get the things that you need. And you'll continue to get the things that you need and continue to be blessed with the things that you need, as long as you follow the directives, the instructions, the torah, as we call it, the instructions of God as we read it in the Holy Scriptures. So we acknowledge once again that there is only one God, right, that there is only one creator, right, that there is only one king, amen, there is only one Lord. And these are titles that we attribute to Jehovah God, but Jehovah is His name. Amen. And that's how we distinguish Him from the gods that people worship, by calling Him by His name. Just like every individual in this room and online has a name, and that is what distinguishes you from someone else. Jehovah is the only one that has that name. So when we call upon the creator of the heavens and the earth, once again, He is the one that we call upon. So throughout the Holy Scriptures, whenever you see the word Lord, especially in the capital letters, that's what you see in the Hebrew language, which is the language that the Holy Scriptures was written in. That's where you see the name Jehovah, or in various places it's pronounced as Yahweh. So once again, that's so that we distinguish the God that we are calling upon versus the gods that other people call upon. Because once again, we acknowledge that Jehovah, once again in various places that pronounce His name as Yahweh, He alone is the creator of the heavens and the earth. So we thank Him once again for allowing us the opportunity to open up His word this day. And as we open up His word this day, we ask that He would teach us the commandments, statutes, and judgments that are necessary in order for us to survive, because we are reading in the book of Ezekiel. This is before the temple was destroyed, before the holy house of Jehovah God was destroyed, where He continued and constantly warned the children of Yisrael what was going to happen if they continued to disobey His word. And coincidentally, some of the things that we will be reading this afternoon will coincide with the things that were read during the morning service. Because Jehovah God warned the children of Israel, as Samal Zokar mentioned this morning, as we came out of the land of Egypt, and as we got into the land, and we started to do all of the things that prevented us from receiving those blessings, Jehovah God continued to warn us again. So we're reading now where that process of being removed from the land and eventually to where we are today, being scattered throughout the earth, we're reading today where this process actually began. There were 10 tribes of the nation of Israel that were already taken into captivity by Assyria at this point. And at this point, those that remained in the land of Yisrael, primarily of the tribe of Judah, but it's known as the kingdom of Judah because not only was the tribe of Judah there, but you had other tribes that were dwelling in that land. But at this point, and when we're reading this today, that as a whole, the children of Israel did not learn the lesson that was given. And therefore, Jehovah God started to bring these punishments upon us. And this, once again, as we read the Holy Scriptures, we start to identify with who we are based on what we read, based on the characteristics of what we read, and based on the things that happen to us based on what we are reading this time. So once again, we are going into the book of Ezekiel. We're starting in chapter 21, verse 1. And for those that are reading from a King James version of the Bible, or any of the related versions such as the NIV, etc., you'll probably be reading from Ezekiel chapter 20, verse 45. Because once again, the content is the same. The numbering system is different when you have the JPS version, which is also the numbering system for any Tanakh that you have. The Tanakh, the JPS, will have the same numbering system as opposed to the King James, once again, the NIV and various versions such as that, which they have the same numbering system. So once again, Ezekiel chapter 20, we're reading Ezekiel chapter 21, starting from verse 1 in the Tanakh, or the JPS version that we have here. But just so as we start reading and things start to seem different, you're probably going to be starting from Ezekiel chapter 20, verse 45.
And the word of Yahweh came unto me, saying, Son of man, set thy face toward the south, and preach toward the south, and prophesy against the forests of the field of the south, and say unto the forests of the south, Hear the word of Yahweh. Thus saith Yahweh God, Behold, I will kindle a fire in thee, and it shall devour every green tree in thee, and every dry tree, and it shall not be quenched. Even the flaming flame, and all the faces from the south to the north shall be seared thereby. And all flesh shall see that I, Yahweh, have kindled it. It shall not be quenched. Then said I, Yahweh God, they say of me, He is but a maker of parables.
So, as we've been reading throughout the book of Ezekiel, even as we read throughout the book of Jeremiah, and as we read through the book of Isaiah, when Jehovah God speaks to the prophets and gives a warning or gives any information, sometimes it's given to the prophet to give to the people in the form of a parable. So Ezekiel's response, as Jehovah God is telling him that, set his face towards the south, because at this time, Ezekiel the prophet is dwelling in the land of Babylon, because he was taken in the wave of captives that were taken during the time of the king Jehoiakim of the kingdom of Judah. So Ezekiel was taken up with that captivity. Once again, when we read in the beginning of the book of Ezekiel, he mentions that he was taken up in that captivity of Jehoiakim. So once again, Ezekiel is prophesying, once again, in Babylon. So there were people of Yisrael that are still dwelling in the kingdom of Judah. So as Jehovah God is speaking to him, he's speaking to those that are already captive with him. And as Ezekiel has been warning, even though the captives that are with him are already out of the land, he's continuing to speak into what we would say into the ether, into the atmosphere, the warnings for those that are already in the land of Israel. But as Ezekiel has been prophesying, we've been reading from chapter 1 all the way up until this point now, that he's saying that all the people are saying about him is that he's one that speaks in parables. But Jehovah God speaks in parables because sometimes that's how we make sense of certain things. Because we get an understanding when things are brought into a level that we can't understand. It's like saying if you had two drums, and then you had one drum that after you finished playing, you broke it down. And when it's time to play again, you tuned it up. And that throughout the year, you conditioned it. But yet anytime you played it, it wouldn't produce the sound that it was supposed to produce. That no matter how much times you broke it down like you're supposed to, so that it wouldn't pop, no matter how much times you tuned it up to give it the right sound, then it still wouldn't produce the same sound. So old drummers of Yisrael, what would you do with that drum?
Get rid of it.
You get rid of it. That's how God is speaking about us. No matter what he did, he's speaking a parable so that we can understand certain things, so on a level that we can understand. So for those that are drummers, they understand the process of breaking the drum down and tuning it up. And as Chief Uziel said, you try changing the skin. But if you change the skin and it's still not giving you a good sound, you're still breaking it down and tuning it up. You condition it, do all that stuff, and it's still not producing the same sound. Then what would you do with it? You throw it in the dumpster. So that's what God is saying about Yisrael. When he speaks in parables, he speaks on a level that we can understand. So for those that are not drummers, for those that are bakers, you mix the dough, you always put it in the right temperature, you look at it, you open the oven, and the bread is always flat. What do you do with it?
Get rid of it.
Well, some people would actually eat it, but you get rid of it. But if the oven, because it could be the oven.
Right.
So he's saying, like, you always use the same oven. You put it at the temperature it's supposed to. You put the dough in the oven, and the bread never comes out right. What do you do with the oven? You get a new one. If you have the insurance. But that's how, once again, Jehovah God is speaking to the children of Israel with parables. So once again, just to give an explanation of why Jehovah God speaks to us in parables, so that we can understand. So he's speaking about the south being trees and the fire coming from the north to burn up everything. And once again, as we continue on, now we're going to see the full explanation of what Jehovah God is saying about the trees being burnt in the south.
Verse 6. Then the word of Adonai came to me, saying, Son of man, set thy face toward Jerusalem and preach toward the sanctuaries, and prophesy against the land of Israel, and say to the land of Israel, Thus saith Yahweh, Behold, I am against you, and I will draw forth my sword out of its sheath, and I will cut off from you the righteous and the wicked. Seeing then, I will cut off from thee the righteous and the wicked, therefore shall my sword go forth out of its sheath against all the flesh from the south to the north, and all the flesh shall know that I, Yahweh, have drawn forth my sword out of its sheath, and it shall not return any more. Sigh therefore, thou son of man, with the breaking of thy loins, and with bitterness shalt thou sigh before their eyes.
So the parable was given first, but when Ezekiel answered and said that they say of me, is he not a maker of parables, then Jehovah said plainly, this is what's going to happen. So instead of the parable of the fire burning up everything, Jehovah God is saying that he's sending a sword into the land of Yisrael, into the territory of the kingdom of Judah, and this sword is going to cut up the righteous and the wicked. Now that seems strange because we read earlier where the righteous should be saved and the wicked are supposed to die. So why is it at this point that Jehovah God is sending his sword to tear up the righteous as well as the wicked? And if you consider, based on what we read earlier today, it's about the entire nation going into captivity. The entire nation being fallen by the sword. The entire nation fallen by famine. The punishments that we read earlier today are for the entire nation of Yisrael. Because once that scale of righteousness versus wickedness gets tipped, and the nation is known as a wicked nation, Yisrael is known as a wicked nation, the punishment that will go upon a wicked nation go upon everybody. And there's nobody that will be spared in that day. Because once again, Jehovah God is taking everybody into captivity, and those that don't make it into captivity are those that die literally by the sword, or those that die by famine. But the righteousness of the righteous will save them, because those, as we read in the book of Jeremiah, are the ones that will end up making it into captivity. But that sword that is coming, which is Babylon, is coming to cut everybody. Because the blessings are for all Yisrael, and the punishment is for all Yisrael. So even as once again, as it was said this morning, individuals can't think because they feel that they live a righteous life, that they are supposed to be protected from everything around about them, when this is about the entire nation. Jehovah God promised to Abraham, our father, that he would bless his entire seed, and that those that bless his seed will be blessed, and those that curse his seed will be cursed. But that applies to everybody. So there are times even today where many individuals think that they can save themselves, but you can't save yourself. This is about the entire nation. That's why we read here that in the book of Ezekiel, and God spoke about people that prayed on behalf of other people, and said that even if Moses was to pray for the people, Moses could not save them. And Moses was one that always considered the people. But Jehovah God is saying even at this time that even if Moses was alive to pray for the people, that Jehovah God would not spare the people based on Moses' cry or Moses' prayer. But these are the caliber of people that we need also in this time. People that care about other people as opposed to themselves. Continue.
Verse 12. And it shall be when they shall say unto thee, wherefore sighest thou? That thou should say, because of the tidings, for it comes. And every heart shall melt, and all hands shall be slack, and every ruach shall be faint, and all knees shall drip with water. Behold, it cometh, and it shall be done, saith Jehovah God. The word of Jehovah came unto me, saying, Son of man, prophesy and say, Thus saith Jehovah, say, a sword is sharpened and also furbished. It is sharpened that it may make a sore slaughter. It is furbished that it may glitter. Or shall we make mirth against the rod of my son, contemning every tree? And it is given to be furbished that it may be handled. The sword, it is sharpened, yea, it is furbished, to give it into the hand of the slayer.
And the slayer, as we continue reading this portion, and as we read throughout the book of Ezekiel, the sword of Jehovah God at this time is Babylon. Just like today, in the year that we know as 2021, the sword of Jehovah God, when it concerns the children of Israel, or all of the nations where he has scattered us into. So when we read it, or as we read in Deuteronomy 28, and we see our condition today, we are living under the sword that Jehovah God has sent against us, that is cutting the righteous as well as the wicked. Because all of us are going to still feel the same pain. Even though we try to divide ourselves from one another, we're all going to feel the same pain, because we are all the same people. And it mentioned earlier, it said, against the rod of my son, contemning every tree. Because now the sword is coming after the rod. The rod is what is the level of punishment that Jehovah God gave earlier. And a rod usually doesn't kill somebody. So when the rod comes, if a parent is beating the child with the rod, the purpose of beating the child with the rod is not to kill them, but to warn them and correct them. But when the rod didn't work, now Jehovah God, he said that he's sending against his children, or against his son, as he says here, the sword is coming after the rod. Because we didn't learn from that rod. We was beat from top to bottom. As we read in the book of Isaiah, and Jehovah God said he doesn't know where else to beat us. Because we're sick from the crown of our head to the sole of our feet. And he beat us thoroughly with the rod. But we didn't return to him. So what else is there to do? As we read in the law, and Jehovah's law last week, when parents have a stubborn and rebellious son, and they said they've chastised him, what do you do with that child? You bring it to the judges, so the judges will execute the punishment that is written where the child would be put to death. Jehovah God exercised, and from our human point of view, much patience. Jehovah God is all the time in the world, so just saying it like that, based on what we would consider patience, Jehovah God exercised as much patience as possible. Hundreds of years went by where we were turning aside from him. So as a result of that, now the sword is coming to replace the rod. Because we didn't learn from the rod, hopefully those that survived the sword will learn from the sword. Continue.
Verse 12. Cry and wail, son of man, for it is upon my people, it is upon all the princes of Israel. They are thrust down to the sword with my people. Smite therefore upon thy thigh, for there is a trial. And what if it contemn every rod? It shall be no more, saith Jehovah God. Thou therefore, son of man, prophesy and smite thy hands together, and let the sword be doubled the third time, the sword of those to be slain. It is the sword of the great one that is to be slain, which compasseth them about.
So some people would say, because it mentions here that the sword is passing a third time, that it signifies the 3 waves of Israel going into Babylon. Once again, that's what some people say. But Jehovah God is saying that he repeatedly is sending the sword, and there are still going to be people that are left over. There are going to be many people that die, but there are still going to be people that are left over to see those that were slain, hoping that they will learn from the mistakes of those that were slain and change their ways. Continue.
I have set the point of the sword against all their gates, that their heart may melt, and their stumblings be multiplied. Ah, it is made glittering, it is sharpened for slaughter. Go thee one way to the right, or direct thyself to the left. Whither is thy face set? I will also smite my hands together, and I will satisfy my fury. I, Yahweh, have spoken it.
So as he said, he will satisfy his fury at this time, because as we read in once again in Deuteronomy chapter 28 from earlier today, that as Yahweh rejoiced to do us good, when we turn against him, he will rejoice to do evil for us, against us. And once again, that's also in comparison with what we read in Isaiah chapter 53, which also shows that Isaiah chapter 53 correlates with Deuteronomy 28, which also shows that both are talking about the nation of Yisrael, where Yahweh God said that he would rejoice to do evil to us only because we did evil in the sight of Yahweh God. And once again, he's executing his fury against us, and these are the things that we call for based on the works of our own hands, because we were thoroughly warned. And even throughout the thorough warnings, we were thoroughly beaten, and we didn't learn from those mistakes, and we didn't make those corrections. So the thing is that now that we are alive today, and we understand that we are the children of Israel, we cannot make the mistakes that the generations before us made. And we have to make sure that we learn from those mistakes and do better. So we're reading things that may depress us. We're reading things that may make us feel sad. But these are the words that Yahweh God spoke to the children of Israel, and it's only because we didn't listen to him. That's why these punishments came into effect. Continue.
23. And the word of Yahweh came unto me, saying, Now thou son of man, make thee 2 ways, that the sword of the king of Babylon may come. The twain shall come forth out of the land, and mark a signpost. Make it clear at the head of the way to the city. Thou shalt make a way, that the sword may come to Rabbah of the children of Ammon, and to Yehudah and Jerusalem the fortified. For the king of Babylon stands at a parting of the way, at the head of the 2 ways, to use divination. He shakes the arrow to and fro. He inquires of the teraphim. He looks in the liver. In his right hand is the lot of Jerusalem, to set battle rams, to open the mouth for the slaughter, to lift up the voice with shouting, to set battering rams against the gate, to cast mounts, to build forts. And it shall be unto them a false divination in their sight, who have weeks upon weeks, but it brings iniquity to remembrance, that they may be taken.
And once again, when we read in the book of Daniel, and once you read in the book of Daniel, because Babylon, once again, is the sword that Yahweh God is using to cut down Yisrael. But Yahweh God is also speaking about what the king of Babylon, Nebuchadnezzar, is doing on his level, on the level that King Nebuchadnezzar could understand, where King Nebuchadnezzar is using divination and doing practices such as looking in the liver of an animal in order to conjure up, to figure out who to conquer next. Because at this time, Babylon was just sweeping throughout this part of the world, conquering people. So in the mind of Nebuchadnezzar, he's using divination to decide at this point whether he should attack Jerusalem or whether he should attack the Ammonites. But Yahweh God is saying that regardless of the divination that King Nebuchadnezzar is using, it is him, Yahweh God, that is sending Nebuchadnezzar into Israel. So King Nebuchadnezzar thought it was his own divination that caused him to go into Jerusalem to burn the house of God and ultimately destroy the walls of Jerusalem and burn the entire city. But Yahweh God is saying that, no, it's him using King Nebuchadnezzar to go cut down Yisrael. Right. And that's why later on, when we once again in the book of Daniel, King Nebuchadnezzar thinks that he's doing all of this stuff of his own. And at that point, Yahweh God had to break him down to make him a beast, to make him understand that there is only one God, and it's not King Nebuchadnezzar. Continue.
29. Therefore thus saith Yahweh God, because ye have made your iniquities to be remembered, and that your transgressions are uncovered, so that your sins do appear in all your doings, because that ye are come to remembrance, ye shall be taken with the land.
And the iniquity comes to remembrance because, as we read, Chief Uziel explained it when he read Ezekiel chapter 18, even though an evil person, when they do good, their evil is no longer remembered. But Yahweh God is saying that because we continue to do these evil practices, those iniquities continue to be before him. As it also says in that chapter, when the righteous person turns from righteousness to do evil, their righteousness is no longer remembered, but only their evil is remembered. So Yahweh God is saying that because we continue to do evil or these iniquities in his sight, these iniquities or transgressions are constantly remembered before him. Continue.
Verse 30. And thou, O wicked one, that are to be slain, the prince of Yisrael, whose day is come, in the time of the iniquity of the end. Thus saith Yahweh God, the mitre shall be removed, and the crown taken off. There shall be no more the same. That which is low shall be exalted, and that which is high abased. A ruin, a ruin, a ruin will I make it. I will make it. This also shall be no more until he come whose right it is, and I will give it to him.
And this is the second time in this chapter, and as we continue going on, time permitted, we'll explain or speak more about it, where he's talking about the princes of Yisrael. But even before we get to that point, who is the prince of Yisrael? More specifically at this time. Not that is incorrect, but more specifically at this time, would be King Zedekiah. Because when Jehovah God is speaking usually about a king of Israel, because Jehovah God is king.
Right.
So when he's speaking about the human kings on earth, he refers to them as a prince. So he's talking about King Zedekiah, and we read through the book of Jeremiah. We read through the end of 2 Kings, and we saw what King Zedekiah was doing. So that's why Jehovah God is saying that him being the prince of Yisrael, he's saying that his day is come now. And when we get to chapter 24, we're going to see, we won't do that today. I'm saying when you get to chapter 24, you start to see that timeline get closer and closer. So at this point, what we're reading here is probably within that 3 to 4 years before the house of God was burnt down and where King Zedekiah was taken into captivity. And we get the exact timeline more specifically when we get to chapter 24. But Jehovah God is saying that the day has come for the prince of Yisrael. And that crown that he has on his head, Jehovah God is going to take that off of him. And he's going to be humiliated in the sight of all of the people that looked up to him. So that's why he's saying that those that are on high will be brought down. And those that were already low, Jehovah God is going to bring them up. Because King Zedekiah and the princes and everybody else that had a certain status, they were abusing their powers. And along with abusing their power, they were doing evil in the sight of Jehovah God. So Jehovah God is saying he's bringing them down because they thought that they were better than the people. When the king's responsibility is to understand that he's just like everybody else. As we also read in the law last week. Continue.
33. And thou, son of man, prophesy and say, thus saith Jehovah God concerning the children of Ammon, and concerning their taunt, and say thou, O sword, keen-edged, furbished for the slaughter, to the uttermost because of the glittering, while they see falsehood unto thee, while they divine lies unto thee, to lay thee upon the necks of the wicked that are to be slain, whose day is come, and the time of the iniquity of the end. Cause it to return into its sheath, in the place where thou wast created, in the land of thine origin will I judge thee. And I will pour out my indignation upon thee, and I will blow upon thee with the fire of my wrath, and I will deliver thee into the hands of brutish men, skillful to destroy. Thou shalt be fuel for the fire, your blood will be in the midst of the land, you shall be no more remembered, for I, Yahweh, have spoken.
So those last few verses of the chapter is speaking about the Ammonites. And even though King Nebuchadnezzar thought that his divination caused him to go into Jerusalem, Jehovah God is saying that regardless of that, King Nebuchadnezzar is going to destroy Israel and then go to the Ammonites and destroy them. The only difference is the children of Israel will survive. But as Jehovah God has spoken concerning the Ammonites, he said at the end of that chapter, he said, thou shalt be no more remembered, for I, Yahweh, have spoken it. And what we consider today, we know Yisrael is still in existence. But do we know any Ammonites today? So therefore the word of God stands. And once again, as we read throughout the book of Ezekiel, the only reason why the children of Yisrael are still alive is because of that promise that he made with Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob. Because as he said many times, we did it worse than Sodom, Gomorrah, Moab, Ammon, and various other nations. The evils that we did were worse than them, and we see what Jehovah God did to nations that did less evil than us. So once again, there's no righteousness in us, so we can't praise ourselves for anything. We only praise God for keeping his word. Because he could have cut us down like he cut everybody else, but he's a God that keeps his word. And he could have cut us down and got rid of us and erased this book.
Yeah, no proof.
To where, there's no proof of him breaking his promise. But that just shows us the type of God that we serve. That he continues to keep his word regardless of anything. So we could continue to do evil, and we may not exist, but children of Israel will exist. Continue.
chapter 22. Moreover, the word of Adonai came to me, saying, Now thou son of man, wilt thou judge? Wilt thou judge the bloody city? Then cause her to know all her abominations.
So as we go through this chapter, we're going to be hearing a lot of things once again that we may not like to hear, but these are the things that the children of Israel have done in the sight of Jehovah God that has caused all of these punishments to come upon us. So the prophet Ezekiel is being charged at this time to judge the bloody city, which is Jerusalem, based on all of the abominations that were done within that city. So once again, as we read these abominations that were done, we have to look within ourselves and consider, are we doing any of these things, or do we know anybody doing any of these things? And if that's the case, we realize that these are the things that cause us to be in captivity. So the only way to get out of captivity is to make sure that we reverse these things and no longer do these things or allow anybody around us that is going to be doing these things. So Ezekiel was charged with judging the city. We are charged with judging one another and make sure that individually we're not doing these abominations and collectively we're not doing any of these abominations. Continue.
Verse 3. And thou shalt say, Thus saith Jehovah God, O city that sheds blood in the midst of thee, that thy time may come, that makest idols unto herself to defile thyself thereby.
So we're going to eventually speed it up but slow it down. So he starts off saying, Jehovah God starts off saying that this city sheds blood in the midst of thee. And we know that we shed a lot of innocent blood. As the children of Yisrael, we shed a lot of blood. We get mad at each other for almost anything and murder each other for almost anything. It could be a bump on the street. It could be, stepping on a shoe.
Right.
It could be anything. And we have no compassion for one another, but we're quick to spill each other's blood. People say this thing like, we shouldn't use the term black on black because that's just a term to demonize black people, right, when we should just call it proximity crimes, because wherever people dwell amongst each other, they commit crimes with one another, which is absolutely true. But just look through Brooklyn. We just use Brooklyn as an example, which is gentrified. The proximity to us and the people of other nationalities is still right there, but we don't attack them. Mm-hmm. So that proximity crimes doesn't work in a gentrified area when we're killing one another. We had a whole bunch of shootings so far this summer. The summer's still not over yet. And it's people of other nationalities in proximity to us. But the guns that we're blazing are blazing against one another. And you see, and it doesn't matter of gender because, as it was spoken about, earlier today, back in the days of how much violence was there, but now it's not even gender based. Like you have women that are just shooting people for nothing. Like many people might have seen the video in the news where the woman got out the car, shot the woman, went back in the car like she did nothing and drove off. You had the other situation in Brownsville with the woman that she was upset with, whatever the man did. She drove her car to hit him, she missed him, killed a 70-year-old woman. These are the things this is the anger that's built up within us, so we have no regard for one another. So Jehovah God is speaking about how we spilt that innocent blood amongst one another. Continue. Because he's also speaking about the idols at this time, because instead of worshiping him who cannot be seen, we decided to erect or build idols to bow down unto. So once again, we have to take our hands away from murder as well as idolatry. These are the things that Jehovah God is saying that we did that caused him to become angry with us. Continue.
You are become guilty in thy blood that you have shed, and are defiled in your idols which you have made, and you have caused your days to draw near, and are come even unto thy years. Therefore have I made thee a reproach unto the nations, and a mocking to all the countries. Those that are near and those that are far from thee shall mock thee. Thou art defiled of name and full of tumult.
And that's exact. Those two verses encompass everything that we read earlier in Deuteronomy 28, where God said that he would make us a mocking to all countries, whether they're near or whether they're far, and he will make us a reproach in the sight of all nations. And here we are today. And once again, we've seen the beginning of this process in the book of Ezekiel now, something that was already spoken. Once again, coincidentally, we read that earlier today in Deuteronomy 28. And Jehovah God is showing us here today how those warnings were not heeded by us. But now these things are coming into effect because we shed innocent blood and because we commit idolatry. Continue.
Verse 6. Behold, the princes of Israel, everyone according to his might, have been in thee to shed blood. In thee have they made light of father and mother. In the midst of thee they have dealt by oppression with the stranger. In thee have they wronged the fatherless and the widow. You have hated my holy things, and have profaned my sharp toat. In thee have been talebearers to shed blood, and in thee they have eaten upon the mountain. In the midst of thee they have committed lewdness. In thee they have uncovered their father's nakedness, and in thee they humbled her that was unclean in her impurity. And each have committed abomination with his neighbor's wife. Each have lewdly defiled his daughter-in-law. Each in thee has humbled his sister, his father's daughter. In thee have they taken bribes to shed blood. You have taken interest and increase. You have greedily gained of your neighbors by oppression, and have forgotten me, saith Jehovah God.
So this is the resume of the children of Yisrael during this time. And this is also the resume of the children of Yisrael today on how we do these things and how we oppress the stranger and we wrong the fatherless and the widow, which is, once again, those that are easily taken advantage of. And it mentioned that the princes of Yisrael, once again, the ones that are in charge, are supposed to execute the judgment to make sure that those that are being oppressed, that they judge righteously so that the oppression is taken away from them, and whatever reward is due to them, they get them. And Jehovah God also mentioned that we despise the holy things. We despise the holy house of God. We despise that holy altar that was in the courtyard. That we started to bring unclean animals on the altar. And that we didn't care about the clean and unclean. And we defiled the holy things of Jehovah God. And he mentioned how also how we desecrate the Sabbath day or profane the Sabbath day. These are the things that we did then that we have to consider now, that we have to make sure that we honor the Sabbath day and keep the Sabbath day holy. Because these are the things that cause the wrath of God to come upon us. So in order to reverse this wrath of God, we have to make sure that we are not doing the things that he commanded us not to do, and we make sure we do the things that he commanded us to do. So we have to once again make sure that we are keeping the Sabbath day holy. And he mentions many things, that we are talebearers. We lie on one another. We spread news on one another in order for, as it says here, to shed blood, in order to get people in trouble. That we're not snitching in order to bring about justice. We're snitching in order to bring evil upon somebody else. And he mentions here about the various forms of adultery. And he mentions also within this, he said, in the midst of thee, they have committed lewdness. Now, what is lewdness? Yeah, incest. Anybody's definition of lewdness? Immodest. Immorality. Anybody here, anybody online could type what their definition of lewdness is. Because within this entire list of things that were given unto us, or our resume, he mentions lewdness. So we're going to speak about lewdness as we go on with the chapter. But these are the things that we have to be mindful of. And he mentions that, going into your father, or uncovering your father's nakedness, and going into a woman in her impurity. These are many of the things that people do today. That during that set aside time where a woman is unclean based on the menstruation, that's when a man is supposed to stay away from the woman. But at this time that we're reading here, people didn't care about that. Just like today in 2021, people don't care about that as well. That they feel at any time it is a good time to be with their wife. But Jehovah God has already set aside a time where the woman is supposed to be set apart. And it mentions the gifts or the bribes that were taken by the princes once again, because the princes are the ones that are judging the people. But they were taking bribes in order to shed innocent blood. And then you had individuals that were taking interest in usury, because once again, when you lend somebody something, especially like more money or something, you're supposed to get back exactly what you lent them to them. But in taking the interest in the usury, they were trying to get back more that they lent out. And once again, we read about that in the Torah last week in Deuteronomy, that these are the things that we are commanded not to do. And once again, this is the entire resume of the children of Israel. And he says that we have forgotten him. By doing all of these things, we have forgotten Jehovah God. Continue.
13. Behold, therefore, I have smitten my hands at thy dishonest gain which thou hast made, and at thy blood which hath been in the midst of thee. Can thy heart endure, or can thy hands be strong in the day that I will deal with you? I, Yahweh, have spoken and will do it. And I will scatter thee amongst the nations, and disperse thee through the countries. I will consume thy filthiness out of thee, and thou shalt be profane in thyself, in the sight of the nations, and thou shalt know that I am Yahweh.
As he spoke, as we read in Deuteronomy 28, he said it here again to warn the people at this time. These were the people, once again, that were already captive in Babylon. Jehovah God is saying that if we continue to do these things, that he would scatter us among the nations. And once again, the resume is the things that he said that he would do to us. And part of that resume, or the description of Yisrael today, is the scattering of Yisrael. So when we realize that these are the things that we did, and we realize that we are the ones that are scattered throughout the earth, then we realize that we are the children of Yisrael. But it goes beyond just knowing that we are Yisrael. We have to return to God's law. We have to return to the instruction that he has given unto us. It goes beyond just professing we are Yisrael. Because there are many people professing Yisrael all throughout the world now. Right. Yeah, many entertainers that say, oh yeah, I know I'm Yisrael. But you won't find them in any service on Shabbat. So it goes beyond, because many of us get excited when we see an entertainer or a sports figure say they're Yisrael. That's not the big deal. We were Yisrael in Yisrael, and God took us out of the land of Yisrael and scattered us throughout the nations. So it goes beyond just saying, I'm Yisrael.
That's right.
So we can't get excited because somebody famous said, oh, I'm Yisrael. Yisrael, the name doesn't mean anything if we're not following the laws and commandments, statutes of God. That's where, if we see an entertainer start doing the commandments of God, then we should start getting excited. But not get excited because somebody said they're Yisrael. But as Jehovah God scattered us throughout the world, part of that punishment is that mentally we get divided one from another. So we're scattered throughout the world, and we think that we're not the same people. Just like today, you have this whole big thing between Sha'Carri and Jamaica. This back and forth where she's throwing much shade at Jamaica. But she's the same people that she's racing against. She just lost, but she's still the same people. So now all that shade talking about Shelly Ann look like Lil Wayne and Jamaicans walk barefoot and all that stuff, you don't need to, you're the same people. And people don't realize that when we start that bickering, this is the mockery that we do in the sight of the nations. Because they look at us and say, well, you're supposed to be, you're all the same people, but you can't get along. So even in sports, you can't just have a friendly battle without losing and just being, okay, I lost, without throwing all that shade against, somebody else. She only came in 6th place because there's only 6 runners. That's about it.
Right.
Anyway, continue.
And the word of Adonai came unto me, saying, Son of man, the house of Yisrael is become dross unto me. All of them are brass and tin and iron and lead. In the midst of the furnace, they are dross of silver. Therefore, thus saith Yahweh, because ye are all become dross, therefore, behold, I will gather you into the midst of Jerusalem, as they gather silver and brass and iron and lead and tin into the midst of the furnace, to blow the fire upon it, to melt it. So will I gather you in my anger and in my fury. I will cast you in and melt you.
So before you continue, what is dross?
Trash.
It's trash, but yeah, the residue of silver, of metal. And how do you get dross?
You burn it.
No, how do you? Through the fire. Right, when you actually melt the metal, the silver, the dross is the impurities that comes out when you melt the silver. So Jehovah God is saying that we've become dross. He's burning all of us to get rid of the impurity.
Good.
So as I said earlier, he's cutting down righteous and wicked. All of us are going to feel the heat. We just got to withstand the heat and not be the dross that he takes out. That's why I mentioned also the furnace, because he's going to put all of us in the furnace.
Right.
But he said that the dross is not going to make it. But we as a whole have become that dross. But he's still going to pick out the pure silver in order to utilize it. So that's why, once again, Jehovah God speaks in these parables, but he speaks in a manner that we can understand, so like people understand what dross is. And you have to melt silver in order to get the dross out. So Jehovah God is speaking to us in that manner, saying that he's melting us all, burning us up all. So we're all going to feel the heat. So don't think that because you think you're super righteous and you've kept so many sharp toe and you wear fringes every day and all this other stuff that you're not going to feel any heat. You're going to feel the heat just like everybody else. You just have to be strong enough, as it was said earlier, be strong enough to withstand that heat. If you're pure, you're going to withstand that heat. If you're dross, you're going to be thrown out. So now you got to realize, what are you? Are you pure silver or are you dross? Are you going to make it through that heat or are you going to get thrown out?
Or you garbage.
or you're going to be that trash or that garbage. Which one are you? And the only way to be that pure silver is by doing Torah. Continue.
Yea, I will gather you and blow upon you with the fire of my wrath, and ye shall be melted in the midst of it. As the silver is melted in the midst of the furnace, so shall ye be melted in the midst thereof. And ye shall know that I, Yahweh, have poured out my fury upon you. And the word of Adonai came unto me, saying, Son of man, say unto her, Thou art a land that is not cleansed nor rained upon in the day of indignation. There is there is a conspiracy of her prophets in the midst thereof, like a roaring lion ravening the prey. They have devoured the souls. They take the treasure of the precious things. They have made her widows many in the midst of her. Her priests have done violence to my law and have profaned my holy things. They have put no difference between the holy and the common, neither have they taught difference between the unclean and the clean. They have hid their eyes from my sharp toe, and I am profane amongst them. Her princes in the midst thereof are like wolves ravening the prey, to shed blood and to destroy souls, so as to get dishonest gain. And her prophets have daubed them with
with whited plaster.
With whited plaster, seeing falsehood and divining lies unto them, saying, Thus saith Yahweh God, when Yahweh hath not spoken. The people of the land have used oppression and exercised robbery, and have wronged the poor and the needy, and have oppressed the stranger unlawfully.
So we read about 4 categories of people right here. We read about the princes, whose responsibility was to teach between the holy and the common, between the clean and the unclean. So the responsibility of the priests was to teach the purity of the instructions of Yahweh God. And they failed at their job because they did not teach the difference between the holy and the common, and they did not teach the difference between the clean and the unclean. Because once again, we live in a time where everybody didn't have a Tanakh or a Holy Scripture or a JPS version in front of them. So the instructions of God was given to the people by the priests. So when people had to learn the difference between the clean and the unclean, knowing when there's a time of separation and when there's a time of, it's okay, they learned that from the priests. When it came to learning what animals you can eat or what animals you cannot eat, it came from the priests. Because the responsibility of the priests, once again, going back to Leviticus chapter 10, that's why they were not supposed to be drinking wine when they were doing certain functions, because they had to make a difference between the unclean and the clean. So in order to teach that, you have to know that. But the priests were not doing so. It also mentions the prophets, because the prophets' responsibility was to inspire people. Mm-hmm. These are what you would call your spiritual advisors or your spiritual guides in the land of Yisrael, who will receive word from God in order to inspire people to follow God. Mm-hmm. They might not be teaching people exactly the word of God in terms of exactly the tenets of keeping the Sabbath day, in terms of exactly, putting fringes on. That's what the responsibility of the priests. The priests teach the actual tenets of the Torah. The prophet's responsibility is to inspire people to make sure that they're following Torah. Then the prince's responsibility, the next category here, the responsibility of the princes is to execute judgments for those, or punishments for those that go against Torah, and to also reward those who are doing Torah. So for those that were robbed, the prince's responsibility is to make sure that they get their stuff back. And those that were doing the robbing, they make sure that they punish them based on the punishment written by God. That's the responsibility of a prince. Or when we read it in the Hebrew, that's the responsibility of a saw. The saw is the one that's, because a lot of words get translated to prince in the English from the Hebrew. You have nasi, you got saw, you have other words. But the saw, when we read back and we get the term a lot in Genesis, but more specifically for Yisrael in Exodus chapter 18, where you had the saw or the prince, or they translated there as a captain over thousands, over hundreds, and over tens. And that their responsibility was to judge the people. They had to be people, and they were given their job description. They had to fear God. Right. They had to be truthful. They had to be knowledgeable. And they had to hate unjust gain. They cannot be taking bribes in order to execute an improper judgment. So you can't have a prince today or someone that's in charge of a certain group of people that are not judging the people righteously. And once again, judgment is not only about executing punishment, but it's also about rewarding those that do good or who their right is due to. So if somebody is wronged, the responsibility of the prince is to make sure that everything is corrected. And then it says, after that, the people of the land have used oppression because they learned all of that from the priests, They learned that from the prophets. They learned that from the princes. So when the people go astray, it's because they learned that from those that were above them. So that's why even before we got to this point, we've seen about 3, and this is now the 4th time, God is speaking against the princes of Yisrael for not executing righteous judgment. So even today, when we don't have righteous judgment being executed, it's because the princes are not doing their job of executing the judgment. And that's why the people go astray. People go astray by doing their own thing, by leaving this way of life, or people just go astray by leaving congregation, or people just go astray by various means. Right. But people go astray because judgment is not executed properly. So when people have a cause and they go to somebody to have that cause heard, that cause has to be judged righteously. And it doesn't mean that everybody that comes with a cause is correct. Right. That's also the other thing. People think that because they have a cause that they're going to be correct and that things have to go their way. You have a cause, both sides, or how many people are a part of that, their situation has to be heard so that the prince could judge. The prince can't judge based on one person's testimony. But that's how a lot of improper judgments were coming out then and are happening now, because the testimony of only one person is coming out. Continue.
30. And I sought for a man among them that should make up the hedge and stand in the breach before me for the land, that I should not destroy it, but I found none. Therefore I poured out my indignation upon them, and I consumed them with the fire of my wrath. Their own way have I brought upon their heads, saith Jehovah God. And the word of Jehovah came unto me, saying...
Before we continue, I was going to say I would need you to be able to read this chapter in 10 minutes. Mm-hmm. With some introduction, of course, if you're up for the task.
And the word of Jehovah came unto me, saying, Son of man, there were 2 women, the daughters of one mother, and they committed harlotries in Egypt. They committed harlotries in their youth. They were their bosoms pressed, and they were their virgins, and their virgin breasts were bruised.
So also in this chapter, because God speaks explicitly. So there were things that we may consider rated R, that we may not want children to hear, but God speaks plainly to everybody. So he mentioned that there were 2 sisters. He's going to give their names just now, but there were 2 sisters of one mother, and they committed harlotries in Egypt. Now, whenever we went astray from God, it was compared to harlotry or adultery. We know what adultery is, right? Yeah. What is adultery?
When a married woman sleeps with a man, or when a man sleeps with a married woman.
Right. When a man sleeps with a married woman, that is not his wife. Right. And when the married woman sleeps with a man, that is not her husband. That's adultery. God compares Israel going astray to adultery. Is there anything positive about adultery?
No.
What is harlotry?
A loose woman.
A loose woman.
Woman that
unmarried.
Has sex with many men.
A woman that has sex with many men.
And is unmarried.
And is unmarried. Is there anything positive about harlotry? No. Or should there be? No. Because God compares us going astray to adultery, which we know is negative, and harlotry. But yet people consider harlotry a positive thing in some cases. But he compares the evil of going astray to harlotry. So in no shape or form should we be accepting, glorifying, or making excuses for harlotry. But we're going to see about that as we continue reading. Continue.
The name of them were Aholah the elder, and Aholibah her sister, and they became mine, and bore sons and daughters. And as far as their name, Samaria is Ohala, and Jerusalem is Aholibah. And
some books may have it in the description, which is actually correct. Ohala is her tent, and Aholibah is my tent is in her. Aholah is Samaria, which is the northern tribes of Yisrael, and Aholibah, which is my tent is in her, is Jerusalem, of course, because the house of God was within Jerusalem. Continue.
And Aholah played the harlot when she was mine, and she doted on her lovers, on the Assyrians, warriors clothed with blue, governors and rulers, handsome young men, all of them, horsemen riding upon horses.
Remember, Aholah is the Samaria, the northern kingdom, playing the harlot with Assyria, with her many lovers, because she fell in love with the Assyrians. So once again, Jehovah is using the parable of a harlot going astray to the Assyrians based on how they looked and how they dressed. Continue.
And she bestowed her harlotries upon them, the choicest men of Assyria, all of them. and on whomsoever she doted, with all her idols she defiled herself. Neither has she left her harlotries, brought forth from Egypt, for in her youth they lay with her, and they bruised her virgin breast, and they poured out their lust upon her.
So in Egypt, both sisters were there, but they were both brought out of Egypt. Aholah, which is a Samaria, committed harlotries with Assyria and allowed her to be touched up. So even beyond just of a man going into a woman, the harlotry is also just touching up a woman. Just to put everything into perspective. Continue.
Wherefore I delivered her into the hands of her lovers, and to the hands of the Assyrians, upon whom she doted. These uncovered her nakedness, and took her sons and her daughters, and they slew them with the sword. And she became a byword among women, for judgment were executed upon her.
So Jehovah God is saying that you wanted to be with these men, now you're going to go be with these men. And whatever they do to you when you're with them now, you call for that. So now she becomes a byword among the women. But once again, this represents Israel. So when God punished Israel, we become a byword amongst the nations. And people look at us in amazement of the things that we do. They look down upon us because of the things that we do. They look at us and be like, even in the midst of pandemic and all types of stuff, we find time to stack up crates and walk up and down in them. There's like, we have nothing else to do, and people are looking at us like, oh, you got to be crazy. This is what you find time for, and you can't find a job, but you can find some crates.
100 of them.
And matter of fact, if you can't find crates, you're buying crates. And now this is how to byword and how to approach the people, because now that we want to stack these crates up, stores are selling crates that never sold crates before. Mm-hmm. Because they know that we're the biggest spenders on anything that we want. And they will make money off of us however they can make money off of us, because that's how they look at us, like we just are spenders. Once again, a lot of these challenges that are out there are just things that we just need some time. We just need some time or something to do something. Because all of this social media stuff, and not that we can't have fun as people, but there's got to be a time and a place for everything. Yes, sir. You had like the water challenge a few years. You had all types of challenges with people doing all types of stuff where probably just going to school would have just taken care of some of these things. Continue.
11. And her sister Aholibah saw this, yet she was more corrupt in her doting than she, and in her harlotries more than her sister in her harlotries. She doted upon the Assyrians, the governors and the rulers, the warriors clothed most gorgeously, horsemen riding upon the horses, all of them handsome young men. And I saw that she was defiled. They both took one way.
So now the sister, seeing her, I guess, older sister, well, not really older, seeing her sister play the harlot, and now being given into the hands of those that she played the harlot with. Aholibah, which is Jerusalem, obviously didn't learn from that lesson. And Aholibah said, well, she's going to multiply her harlotries more than her sister. The harlotry didn't do anything for Aholah, so obviously it's not going to do anything for Aholibah. But she saw all the things that happened, and she decided to do it anyway. Continue.
And she increased the harlotries, for she saw men portrayed upon the wall, the images of the Chaldeans portrayed with vermilion, girded with girdles upon their loins, and with pendant turbans upon their head, all of them captains to look upon the likeness of the sons of Babylon, even of Chaldea, the land of their nativity.
So she saw all of the images of what the Babylonians, because once again, her sister was amazed by the beauty of the Assyrians, which is basically idolatry, but it's portrayed as the men that she was attracted to. So now Aholibah is attracted to the men of Babylon. So Aholibah, in increasing her harlotries, is, once again, the parable is that she's looking at the beauty of these men, and she's going into harlotry because of the beauty of these men. And once again, from Egypt all the way up to Babylon and Assyria, a lot of them, when you see a lot of their relics and everything, they depict a lot of things on their walls. And as we read in this chapter, we're going to see some things that are predicted or depicted on their walls, which we don't want y'all to visualize. Continue.
And as soon as she saw them, she doted upon them, and sent messages unto them into Chaldea. And
so she saw these pictures, she saw how beautiful these men were, and she sent messages to them. Similar today, where a woman may see a man and send a DM. And vice versa, where a man may see a beautiful woman and send a DP in her DM.
Oh.
These are the things that are happening today. And we're not talking about outside of Yisrael. We're talking about within our own confines. That social media is what's causing a lot of problems. And the sexuality that's being displayed by entertainment is higher than what we experienced in our generations, probably in the 80s, 90s, where in order to see certain types of videos, you had to watch BET Uncut.
Right.
Every video today is BET Uncut. You don't need BET Uncut because every video is like that and even worse today. Yeah. So the children today are sexually charged based on the images that they're seeing. So when you think about the sexuality that's happening within Yisrael, it's because it's not being controlled and it's also not being spoken about. So they're seeing all of these things. They're seeing their famous entertainers naked all the time. And there's nobody to explain to them what's happening. So now in order for them to discharge of that sexual urge that's being given unto them by social media, they do it with one another. So don't think that sexting is not something that's happening within Israel, because it actually is happening. There are DPs and DMs all the time. Back in the days, you needed a phone number. You don't need somebody's phone number today. All you need is their Instagram handle and send them a message, and your parents would never even know. Snapchat gives you the option, you send a message and it deletes after the person reads it. So they're sending pictures and messages to each other all the time. So as God is saying here that the harlot Aholah saw these men and sent him messages. Saw them to come and get her. Continue.
17. And the Babylonians came to her into the bed of love, and they defiled her with their lust, and she was polluted with them, and her soul was alienated from them. So she uncovered her harlotries and uncovered her nakedness. Then my soul was alienated from her, like my soul was alienated from her sister. Yet she multiplied in her harlotries, remembering the days of her youth, wherein she played the harlot in the land of Egypt, and she doted upon the concubinage with them, whose flesh is as the flesh of asses, and whose issue is like the issue of horses.
That verse is exactly what it means.
Right.
There's no way to filter that verse. That verse is exactly what it means. As the harlot, she was mesmerized by these DPs. Because she, once again, she was seeing things that she wouldn't have seen before. And she was mesmerized by what the foreigners were showing her. And that's why she started to multiply in her harlotries. Instead of turning away from it, she returned back to her harlotries that she learned in Egypt. These are things that we are supposed to learn from. So when we did certain things in the past, we're supposed to turn away from that. But once again, that verse is exactly what it is. There's no way to explain it any other way than what it is. Continue.
Thus thou did call to remembrance the lewdness of thy youth, when they from Egypt bruised thy breast for the bosom of thy youth. Therefore, O Aholibah, thus saith Jehovah God, behold, I will raise up thy lovers against thee, from whom thy soul is alienated, and I will bring them against thee on every side, the Babylonians and all the Chaldeans, Pekod and Shoah and Keoah, and all the Assyrians with them, handsome young men, governors and rulers, all of them, captains and counselors, all of them riding upon horses. And they shall come against thee with hosts, chariots, and wheels, and with an assembly of people. They shall set themselves in array against thee, with buckler and shield and helmet round about. And I will commit the judgment unto them.
In other words, the people that you fell in love with, the people that you committed these harlotries with, are the same ones that are going to go against you with war. And when it comes to Yisrael, the same ones that are going to take you into captivity. Just like Aholah, which is Samaria, fell in love with Assyria and committed harlotries with Assyria, and they were the ones that took Aholah or Samaria into captivity, and Aholibah was the one that committed harlotries with Babylon, and God sent Babylon to Aholibah, which is Jerusalem, to take Jerusalem into captivity. Jehovah God is saying, those that you fall in love with, you're going to fall into their hands. If that's what you want to be with, or that's who you want to be with, that's where you're going to end up. So once again, these are parables, but we also have to relate them to actual instances today. When it comes to harlotry, that we cannot succumb to the lusts that exist in the world today. Because if we give ourselves over to these lusts, God is just going to give us into the hands of those that we fall in lust with. Continue.
And they shall judge thee according to their judgments, and I will set my jealousy against thee, and they shall deal with thee in fury, and they shall take away thy nose and thy ears.
Which is a part of punishment that they did. They were just cutting off noses and ears as punishment for those that they took captive. Continue.
And thy residue shall fall by the sword. They shall take thy sons and thy daughters, and thy residue shall be devoured by the fire. They shall also strip thee of thy clothes and take away thy fair jewels.
So as we read earlier, we end up being in nakedness and one of all things, because we were stripped bare of all of the beautiful things that Jehovah God gave us. Because of those beautiful things that God gave us, we utilize that to worship false gods. So utilize that in beauty for other people. Continue.
I will make thy lewdness to cease from thee, and thy harlotry brought forth from the land of Egypt, so that thou shalt not lift up thy eyes unto them, nor remember Egypt anymore.
So once again, this term harlotry is also wrapped up in this term lewdness, which we're not going to, we don't have time to explain that. But when you read the verse in Leviticus 19:29, where it said, don't prostitute your daughter to be a harlot, lest the land fall into harlotry, and the land be filled with lewdness. The same word zema, which is a Hebrew. Mm-hmm. So the land being filled with harlotry, which is also lewdness, is something that is not acceptable by God, whether male or female.
Amen.
Continue.
For thus saith Jehovah God, behold, I will deliver thee into the hand of them whom thou hatest, and into the hand of them from whom thy soul is alienated, and they shall deal with thee in hatred, and shall take away all thy labor, and shall leave thee naked and bare, and the nakedness of thy harlotry shall be uncovered, both thy lewdness and thy harlotries. These things shall be done unto thee, for that thou hast gone astray after the nations, and because thou art polluted with their idols.
So everything that we read in Deuteronomy 28, because we wanted to follow the false gods, God said that he's going to send it to a nation to worship gods of wood and stone. And he's going to strip us bare and make us a reproach in the sight of all people. So once again, coincidentally, everything that we read earlier today is exactly what we're reading right now. And these punishments started to go into effect right now as we're reading here. Continue.
In the way of thy sister hast thou walked, therefore I will give her cup into thy hand, saith Jehovah God. Thou shalt drink of thy sister's cup, which is deep and large. Thou shalt be for scorn and for derision. It is full to the utmost. Thou shalt be filled with drunkenness and sorrow, with the cup of astonishment and appallment, with the cup of thy sister Samaria. Thou shalt even drink it and drain it, and thou shalt crunch the sherds thereof. Wow. And shalt tear thy breast, for I have spoken it, saith Jehovah God.
So the parable is that everything that Samaria was getting, you're going to get because you followed exactly what Samaria did. And it's just fitting. You're not going to get a different punishment by doing the same thing. You're going to get exactly what you deserve. Continue.
And Jehovah said moreover unto me, Son of man, wilt thou judge Aholah and Aholibah? Then declare unto them their abominations, for they have committed adultery, and blood is in their hands. And with their idols have they committed adultery, and their sons, whom they bore unto me, they have also set apart unto them to be devoured. Moreover, this they have done unto me. They have defiled my sanctuary in the same day, and have profaned my sharp toat. For when they had slain their children to their idols, then they came the same day into my sanctuary to profane it. And lo, thus have they done in the midst of my house.
So we can't be doing what we want to do during the week, and then when the Sabbath day comes, act like we're holy. Because that's what Jehovah God is saying here, that it was one thing we already defiled the sanctuary and profaned the Sabbath day, and we slain our children, giving them to the idols, which today we give our children to idols by way of water as opposed to fire. But Jehovah God is saying we're doing all these things and still want to come in the midst of the sanctuary. Continue.
And furthermore, ye have sent for men that come from far, unto whom a message was sent, and lo, they came, for who thou didst wash thyself, paint thy eyes, and deck thyself with ornaments, and sat upon a stately bed with a table prepared before it, whereupon thou didst set my incense and my oil. And
so right there, because in that verse it mentioned that Samaria, or both of them, washed themselves, painted their eyes, and decked themselves with ornaments, and sat on stately beds. People pick out the painting of the eyes and say that painting of the eyes is wrong.
Whatever.
But it's saying that these are the things that she did to beautify herself for her lovers. But these are things that women did to beautify themselves, period. It's what you beautify yourself for that becomes the issue. Beautifying yourself, because you can't pick out painting the eyes and say that that's wrong when it started saying she washed herself first. So that means washing is wrong. So you can't say washing is okay, the painting of the eyes is wrong, and then putting on ornaments is okay. These are just things that she did to purify herself or beautify herself in order to make herself attractive for her lovers. The problem is her lovers were false gods. Ooh. That's what the problem was, not just the picking out the painting of the eyes. Continue.
And the voice of a multitude being at ease was therein, and for the sake of men, there were so many, brought drunken from the wilderness. They put bracelets upon their hands and beautiful crowns upon their heads. Then said I of her that was worn out by the adulteries, still they have committed harlotries with her, even her. For everyone went in unto her as men go into a harlot, so went they in unto Aholah and unto Aholibah, the lewd women.
So God said that he thought that they would have learned from their harlotry, that they were worn out by their adultery, but they still didn't have enough. Continue.
But righteous men, they shall judge them as adulterers are judged, and as women that shed blood are judged, because they are adulteresses, and blood is in their hands. For thus saith Yahweh God, an assembly shall be brought up against them, and they shall be made a horror and a spoil. And the assembly shall stone them with stones, and dispatch them with their sword. And they shall slay their sons and their daughters, and burn up their houses with fire. Thus will I cause lewdness to cease out of the land, that all women may be taught not to do after your lewdness. And your lewdness shall be recompensed upon you, and ye shall bear the sins of your idols, and ye shall know that I am Yahweh.
And we thank Yahweh God for teaching us this lesson this day, praying that he would continue to teach us and hoping that we would all learn from the lessons that he teaches us, that we would not follow after the generations prior to us that did evil, but we would learn to do good so that we don't continue to receive these judgments that are coming upon us. But Yahweh God desires to reward us based on the first 14 verses of Deuteronomy chapter 28. But that only comes into effect when we hearken to the word or hear or listen to the word of Yahweh God, following his commandments, statutes, and his judgments. So praying that the Most High God would continue to be with us, praying that his presence would be with us and continue to teach us, and just also bear in mind that we are a little over a week and 2 days from Yom Teruah. It's coming up real fast, and then that begins the 7th month. So we just have to be ready for that season. So, and this is the time to return to Yahweh God, because we know within that month we also have Yom Kippur. So we pray that the Most High God would allow us the opportunity to return to him, and we ask that he would strengthen us with his commandments, statutes, and judgments. Hallelujah.